Hi, what's up? What's shaking? Potato chips or bacon? My name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com, and you are watching the postgame show on the Iowa Sports Review, the premier and some would say only semi-sound off, call in, whatever you want to call it, postgame show on all the YouTubes, and I am here for all of you. We've got quite a lot to celebrate, or at the very least talk about today, after Iowa's victory 28-21 over Nebraska, sealing a 10-win season for the Hawkeyes and sealing a gruesome fate for the Cornhuskers, who fall to 3-9 on the season, including 1-8 in Big Ten play. And, that would be the headline if you didn't watch the game. If you did watch the game... Where do you even begin? Alex Padilla got benched after a half, and I kind of don't think it was a bad idea. Kinda. Now, it's not like the Iowa offense immediately permanently turned around as soon as Spencer Petras was under center or anything like that, but it kind of did look like Petras had a better game than Padilla did on balance. That's a lot to process, a lot to discuss. What does it mean for the bowl game? I'm just going to go ahead and assume that Iowa does get a bowl berth. I'm going to walk out on a limb there. I know that they're eligible, but I also think that the bowl committees have to look at a 10-win Iowa and say, you know what, we're not going to snub them. We're actually going to, So I think that's going to happen. Just, I know it's a bold thing for me to say, but thank you. First of all, Ethan, welcome. Good to see you once again. Stupid game or stupidest game ever? I'm really leaning toward the latter. Because it seemed like the stupidity came from everywhere. The referees, yes, check, and check. I would say there were no fewer than a half dozen calls, most but not all of which went against Iowa, where you're just sitting there wondering, like, what? How? Why? What? Stupidity from Nebraska, oh boy, in spades, especially in the fourth quarter. And, the simple math, the law of averages, you would expect them to actually have one good fourth quarter this year. No. And they lost con gusto today, which was amazing to see, because it's not like Iowa played well. There was a lot of stupidity on Iowa's front too. Just weird plays that shouldn't have worked for Nebraska did. The defense caught itself out of position a little too often. It wouldn't have surprised me, and it wouldn't have been karmically incorrect for Iowa to have lost this game. I mean, truly. They took 3 quarters and just sort of goofed around. And against most teams, you're not really going to be able to get away with that. And especially against most teams that are as talented, man-to-man, up and down the roster as Nebraska is. Like, there is talent on that team. But I don't know if it's a Scott Frost thing. I don't know if it is, some cursed monkey paw curled its finger before the season. I think that's what it is. I think that we do have to go with the cursed monkey paw. My guess, and I think that history will prove me correct, but my guess is before the season, Scott Frost turned to his cursed monkey paw and said, you know what? All I want is one Big Ten season where we don't get outscored in conference play. And it happened. Wish granted. Unfortunately, that did mean that Nebraska finished the season in Big Ten play 1-8 with a 0-point differential. It's never happened before. It should never happen. There's so many things mathematically that have to go right or wrong depending on who you cheer for. We cheer for the good ones, but there's so many things that had to happen for Nebraska to end up 1-8 with a 0-point differential in Big Ten play. I'm just gobsmacked, agog. Yes, and Ethan, the Frogurt is also cursed because it has potassium benzoate in it. See, I got your reference. I got you. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about with Alex Padilla getting benched too, because who had that on their bingo card? It's one thing to bench your starting quarterback for the backup, and injuries being what they are. But Petrus was healthy to start the game. Clearly, was allowed to dress, was allowed to come into the game, but they had given the first half to Padilla. And I don't know what sort of leash was communicated to him prior to the game. And I'm not sure Padilla had a terrible half, but he did throw a few too many passes. I think I counted 3 of them that were potential picks, and none of them ended up being interceptions. But you can tell, based on how this coaching staff has operated for years and years, and we knew it based on how we had seen Petrus play and the throws he's allowed to make, the throws he's not allowed to make. But we've known for years that if there's one thing that this staff abhors, it's turnovers. And just because there weren't any actual interceptions, it really seemed like Padilla was playing with fire in that first half. So I'm not surprised that he got benched. Do I agree with it? I don't know. That's not a yes, and it's not a no. Say what you will about Petrus, but he had a pretty good second half. It wasn't great. It wasn't, I don't think it made believers necessarily out of a whole bunch of people who, came into the game with a certain idea of how much playing time Petrus should get now and for the rest of his career. And most of those people with those strong opinions would say none. And again, not sure I agree with that either, but here we are. And, on balance, and Petrus did throw a couple really just absolute howlers. So it's not like he came in and blew the Huskers off the field, right? But Petrus did throw for 102 yards, 7 for 13, both of which were better numbers than Padilla in the first half. And, Iowa scored 22 points in the second half. There's only so much of that you can put on the quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But results are there. So this is, I would say this is an interesting experience. Ethan, look, I talk to myself all the time. You can make the case I'm talking to myself right now. I'm sitting in an apartment with no other life forms other than a cat, and I'm just talking for 60 minutes straight, and hopefully somebody on the internet is like listening. So Hawkeye football just drives us all mad in one way or another, right? Right, doesn't it? Nothing to worry about there, though. And boy, that fourth quarter. I wish I were more surprised by it than I am. And that's usually something that you would expect to hear from me, like after a loss, right? Like that's usually when somebody's talking like that, it's because, Ferentz went 3 and out 15 times in the fourth quarter or something like that. But no, like when it was 21-6, and when Nebraska's doing things like, getting hit when they throw and still finding a wide open receiver, it was understandable to be pessimistic at that point. And, when Iowa responds with a field goal drive, you're like, oh boy. But, you just have to just wait and see with Nebraska. Just like let's let Nebraska do their thing in the fourth quarter, because Nebraska's thing in the fourth quarter is throw the game away without fail. Like the only one they didn't throw it away against was Northwestern, and Northwestern played quite possibly the worst game of football by a Power 5 team in decades, that game. I mean, it was an atrocity. Pat Finn was there. He was in the house for it. Came back saying that they should have been relegated to the MAC after that game alone. Ethan, we don't want the cat to make a cameo. Fortunately, you were not here when we had the catastrophe. She walked into the camera at a very unflattering angle, an angle that almost got us kicked off of YouTube. We'll put it that way. So, if anything, she has had too much screen time, and as a responsible parent, you limit your pet's screen time. It's the right thing to do. Yeah. So I want to know what all of your thoughts are. So if you're watching on YouTube, and most of you are, hop on into the chat section. It's going to be at the right or the bottom right of your screen, depending on what platform you're using, what your settings are, and you're going to see mostly Ethan. But that's if you've got a thought, a comment, a question, a hot take, this is it. This is your forum. And while you're here, do us a little bit of a favor. Click that little like button. It's the one with a thumbs up, like this, except without my face. And if you have not already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Not only does it make our numbers go up and make us feel happy, but it tells YouTube that this is a fun, active, and growing community that more Hawkeye fans ought to be a part of. So, like, it's their algorithm, it's not ours, but it does, do us a little bit of a favor. We always appreciate that. So yeah, I'm sure that we've got a whole lot of people with a whole lot of thoughts about the game. Dan says that they should have been running Tyler Goodson 30 times a game. Okay, so for Mr. Goodson and his family, first of all, a hearty congratulations, because Tyler Goodson cracked 1,000 yards on the season in that game, and ended up with 156 yards on 23 carries. And man, that was a heck of a game. 55 of those came on that one play where Iowa really, really sent the message that this game was not going Nebraska's way. I thought that was, among many, a very pivotal play of the game. Obviously there was the interception, obviously the safety, obviously. Oh, by the way, defense got a safety. Is that the first one this season? Improbably. Might have been the second. Anyway, but yeah, hey, defense. But yeah, I thought that run by Goodson to get Iowa into scoring position and to really, really cement it as the Hawkeyes game was a great play. Well blocked. And the offensive line, they've had themselves a season this year, and not in a good way. And they didn't really have all that good of a game today. They had some very well blocked runs at times, but the consistency wasn't there. The pass blocking, some good, some bad. That so and that sort of inconsistency is usually killer for an offensive line in general, but especially a Kirk Ferentz offensive line. Like, usually it's a great way to get benched, but benched for who? You know what I mean? Like, they tried so many different groups of five, injury played a little bit of a part of it, inexperience, but they never had their group of five where they said, here are our hosses, and our guys are going to line up and beat your guys. We're just going to hit you in the mouth. And that has always been a Kirk Ferentz thing to have on the team. And I don't think that there's ever been a season, maybe 2004, But I don't think there's ever been a season where Iowa had such a rebuild in front of them on the offensive line and still, contended for a division title, or, if it was the, pre-Legends and Leaders era, a 10-win season. The only corollary you can make is 2004, which was a magical and hilarious season. And I'm not sure that this has been quite as hilarious, but I do think it has been a really great, I'm sorry to say it, but I think it's been quite an accomplishment by the coaches. I know. Because I don't think that their game day coaching has been all that good. And that's the metric by which most people judge these coaches, and validly so. I'm not saying that that's an incorrect thing to do, but they got a 10-win season out of a team without an offensive line, with an okay defensive line, with receivers to replace, starting wide receivers, two of the best Iowa's ever had to replace them with true freshmen, a pair of them. And in a quarterback controversy, two benchings in Big Ten play, and they still ended up with 10 wins. If there's any credit to go in a 10-win season, and there should be, how does none of it go to the coaches for this? I mean, it's amazing. Sean, okay. I didn't get a chance to see any of the Frost presser. I had it on mute, and then as soon as I unmuted it, it ended. So thank you for this little note on Frost's presser, and anything else that he said, I'm here for. It is borderline narcotic to me after Nebraska losses to see who he blames this time. And today it is his punter. I'm not, okay. I'm not sure that I would agree with that. Obviously, yes, block punt changed the game completely. That was not a well-blocked play by Nebraska. And you can't blame the punter for that. Do you want him to get the ball up more quickly? Yeah, I guess. But, I don't think that he did anything necessarily incorrectly on that. I think Nebraska was not expecting Iowa to come after that punt, understandably. Iowa's always been more interested in setting up blocking for Charlie Jones, and as the Big Ten's best return man, which is a hill I'm absolutely prepared to die on. But as the Big Ten's best return man, Iowa has been gearing their punt plays toward freeing him as opposed to coming after the punter and potentially, getting themselves a 15-yard penalty. That's always been the Ferentz's risk calculus. And say what you will, that has been the way that they've approached this season. So when they run a punt block out of nowhere, and Nebraska's, they had those three guys in front, but they were really not prepared for that punt rush. It was, I got to say, and again, I'm not defending all of their in-game coaching decisions by a long shot, but hey, great call on the punt block. It worked, and blaming your punter for it happening is exactly that type of Scott Frost loser mentality that means that they are never, ever going to win with him in Lincoln. Never. All right. The fact that they're bringing him in, back for 2022 after telling him to, fire all of his offensive coaches, that as much as anything was about reducing the buyout, they're getting ready for him to go. But man, that guy he has one winning season as a head coach. And that was that 13-0 national championship. But, that was in the American Conference. It's not Power 5 football. It's not. And it doesn't translate to the Big Ten. Just doesn't. Not the way that he wants it to, UCF ball won't work in the Big Ten. Not unless you've got Ohio State's talent and Ohio State's discipline. And Nebraska has neither. They're not even in the same area code as any of that. So, man, I am so happy that we've got Kirk Ferentz on our sidelines and they've got Scott Frost on theirs. So happy for that. And hey, man, LeVar Woods, give that man the assistant head coach spot. Give it to him. Because Iowa doesn't win that game without superior special teams. We haven't even talked about Caleb Shudak going 4 for 4. And most of those were very difficult kicks. It's just a shame that he's not, Lou Groza award material, apparently. This is best game of the year. I mean, the fact that they would even announce the finalists before the season's even done is silly. I get that that's, sort of part of their like hype schedule, this or that. Come on. You can't tell me that there are 3 better kickers in the country than Caleb Shudak. You can't. Sponge, words that I'm not allowed to say. Pants. I was never really concerned about this game either. Honestly. I don't know if part of it was part of it, I was so morbidly fascinated by what was happening in that game. Part of it was sort of a resignation that, Iowa is sort of overdue for maybe just one loss, maybe one in this rivalry. Like, I didn't want it to happen, but it sort of seemed like they were getting, those first 3 quarters, they had mostly earned that 21-9 deficit. Mostly. To me, they took a TD off the board that they shouldn't have, right? But even if we accept that, they had sort of earned their way into that deficit. But it's Nebraska, and we have seen them do this every single week, except for the one in the Big Ten. They find new and amazing ways to lose games, ways that rival even like the chaos team Hoosiers of the beginning of the decade, of the 2010s, which was performance art. This is somehow worse. So yeah, I was not all that worried, especially because, at worst it was a 15-point deficit and it didn't stay 15 for very long. That's 2 possessions. And I understand that when they kicked that field goal to make it 21-9, still a little bit of consternation because that's a situation where you need 2 touchdowns, but a 12-point deficit is a whole lot more manageable than a 15-point deficit. Because a 15-point deficit, while still technically 2 scores, also involves converting an 2-point conversion just to tie the game. 2 touchdowns against a 12-point deficit will win it for you. Now, as it turns out, the safety and field goals and all that made most of that calculus moot. But, it ended up working just fine for Iowa. It was always manageable. And as long as you keep it manageable against a team that is willing to, self-destruct on its own, all you got to do is just hang around for long enough and then just get out of the way. And that's what Iowa did. Yeah, Sean, the Tory Taylor's rant, we played that on Wednesday's stream. And being that it was the night before Thanksgiving, I'm not surprised that you weren't there. But I really loved it. I thought that was a great teammate move by Tory Taylor. I'm glad that he's going to be back for another year. Man, I hope that they give him some more Ray Guy love than they did this year. And this was a tremendous year for punters. Don't get me wrong. But Tory deserves a little bit more. And the fact that he's willing to come back to Iowa to try to get that. And he did have some room for improvement himself. He was not quite the same punter in the last half of the season than he was in the first half. I think that, the Iowa coaching staff and Tory himself would be the first to tell you that too. But the fact that he was willing to take his opportunity, his camera time, and say, yeah, me and Ray Guy is one thing, but what about Shudak? And acknowledge his teammates' accomplishments and the fact that he got snubbed and that Keith Duncan got snubbed on that exact same thing just a couple years prior too. Man, that's some great teammate stuff right there. That is it's one thing to set a standard as a coach. It's another thing for the players to set it themselves and to abide by it. And that tells me that there is a great chemistry, a great character in that Iowa program that not every Big Ten team has, like Nebraska. Was this game generally good play calling? I would agree with that. Generally poor execution. I would agree with that in the first 2/3 of the game. Yeah. Polar opposite of most of the season. Yeah. And you should be sorry for your screen name. There are children in the world, okay? Some of them watch SpongeBob. And off-color humor? SpongeBob SquarePants? Never heard of that, sir. Not once. No, no, no. Yeah, this was a weird game all around. And it was so unlike the way that they have, and I'm not going to defend all the play calling. I thought the reverses were too cute by half. There's no need to try more than one in a game, like ever. But generally, you could see what they were trying to do. You could see it, the calls made sense, even if they ended up in a drop or a bad throw or this or that, bad blocking. But you could see what they were doing. Oh man, that I would say this, Joe. I'll say this. That overtime loss stunk out loud. It was bad. In a way, it's exactly what Iowa needed at the time, even though we didn't know it. And even though everyone, up to and including all the players and the coaches, would have preferred a win, obviously. But not only did that loss sort of solidify the notion that, yeah, you probably do need to go with Beathard instead of Rudock. Like that was a watershed game, especially when Rudock turned down an opportunity to hit a guy streaking open on a play action. You remember that play? I do. But then the aftermath of that, when Nebraska's AD famously said that, yeah, we beat them, but we had to evaluate where Iowa is as a program. First of all, it is so Nebraska for their athletic director to go ahead and say that out loud. But everybody in Iowa City heard that and they were like, huh, okay, noted. And from there, it has been nothing but dump trucking for those poor boys in Lincoln, right? That's that sort of hubris that you can't really get away with in college ball. Not when you've got Nebraska talent. Not when you've got Scott Frost or Mike Riley, or even they would probably kill for Bo Pelini, right? They'll say no, but Pelini won games. Pelini went to the Big Ten championship, right? Mike Riley's not going there. Scott Frost, no, not even close. He's never getting there. I think that they would not. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lincoln. Correct me if I'm wrong. They would not mind a coach that just berated their players, humiliated their players, if it meant that they got back to 9 wins a year. They wouldn't mind at all. They'd be like, well, we're just getting back to Nebraska football. Isn't that what they always want over there? Just get back to Nebraska football. They would take it in a heartbeat. Yeah, man. Vince back. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm not coming back. But I mean, if you're not going to tweet after Iowa beats Nebraska, then when? Well, then why does the site even exist for us? But yes, it does mean 6 more years of Nebraska beatdowns. It's canon at this point. I think a huge part of Taylor dropping off was yes. Yeah, Joe, that's a great point. Because Terry Roberts was so good at punt coverage and not only trying to down the ball inside the 5, which he was great at, but also he was the difference between a receiver deciding to fair catch or to take off. And if they made the mistake of trying to return it when Roberts was coming in unblocked, bad things were going to happen to them, right? He was almost as much of a factor in Iowa's punt efficiency as Taylor himself. So yeah, that's a guy that Iowa really missed over the last half of the season. Didn't really get as much in the way of headlines, but yeah, he was okay. We'll say this: I'm really, really, really glad that Marchese. I really think I think I'm pronouncing that right. Really glad that he stepped up as the next like special teams specialist. Because Iowa needed that without Roberts. It had to be somebody, and Marchese decided it was going to be him. I'm an institution. Oh, you know who's really an institution? Diet Dr. Pepper. It's from Fansville, which is a real thing. I went to live in Fansville. No, I really do like that soda. Nicholas, okay, let's back up on this one a little bit. So last night there was a rumor going around from what I understand to be a sort of reliable Hawkeye like insider, somebody who knows somebody. We'll put it that way. There's a rumor going around that the flu was going through Iowa's QB room and that Petrus and Padilla had not practiced all week. I don't know if that rumor was ever verified. If anything, that would sort of suggest to you that Deuce Hogan would have started because Kirk Ferentz is not I'm going to let you take the entire week of practice off and then you're going to start. Generally not the way he approaches things, but I also understand that you would probably rather have Padilla and Petrus after no practice than Deuce Hogan with practice at this point. Probably. There's no reason to suggest otherwise. That being said, I'm not sure that there's validity to that rumor. I would love to hear from some of the people involved in that, whether it was true or not, because if it was, and it's possible that it was, the fact that they combined for a flu game, they definitely didn't do as well as Michael Jordan would have. But I mean, if they were coming in, if both of them were coming into that game less than 100% and without a crisp week of practice with their receivers, the fact that they were able to combine for 178 yards passing, nearly 50%, pretty good. Not great. And boy, there were some real, like I've said before, some really rough passes. But that being said, results are what they are, and their results were not too bad. So if it's true, cool. And, if it's not, if it just lives on in Hawkeye lore as the game that may or may not have been a flu game, well, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Like, it's all part of the legacy, all part of the stories that we're going to tell each other. I mean, gosh, 10 years from now, we'll say that they were both in the ICU. You know what I mean? And Ferentz, just dragging them out, finally getting them off the hospital bed, unhooking all their things, like go in there and play football. And they're like, "Yes, sir, coach." Yeah, Ethan. The worst thing that could have happened was reverses working for Brian Ferentz. And especially working against Nebraska's defenses, because we have seen that over the years. But it's pretty clear that the way that they were executing them was not great. Gavin Williams tossing the ball to Arlen Bruce. You probably want guys with a little bit more on-field experience if you're going to start going exotic like that. Yeah, I wasn't a fan either. But, you also sort of see where they were going with it. And I'll say this. If those reverses had the effect of keeping Nebraska from jamming the tackle box, everything inside if that's what opened up those running lanes for Tyler Goodson, because, man, he hasn't had a whole lot of games where he had 156 yards rushing this season, especially against, or especially behind that offensive line. Then maybe in the broader scheme, good calls. Would I go that far? I don't know if I would go that far, but again, you see how they make sense in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, that 156 yards for Goodson today was a season high. His previous best was 153 with 3 scores, granted, against Kent State. So for Goodson to set a season mark against a team that motivated, against a front seven that is that talented, and I've said all season long, Iowa should be worried about Nebraska's front seven. And we saw a whole lot of that for most of the game. So the fact that Goodson got, his season high, got 156 yards, would have even been over the century mark without that 55-yard rush. But, you don't get to just say, hey, the best things, they didn't happen. It's not the way that works. But, man, cannot say enough about Goodson and his performance, and really the way the offensive line blocked for him for most of his carries. Again, some really bad plays, but not a whole lot of them. Ethan, I think that's a great question, and it would not surprise me if the answer is yes. I don't think Kirk Ferentz would ever come out and say where Iowa was at a program, that whole thing. Was that Bill Moose? Was he the AD there at the time? But boy, if our fans, if our fan base took it that personally, and we did, then yeah, it would not surprise me at all. In fact, I would be more surprised if it weren't the case that Ferentz heard that and was like, huh. Gets out this little Kirk Ferentz notepad. Evaluate where I was at as a program. Noted. Because he is that petty. He absolutely is that petty. I think he's a little bit bummed that Mark D'Antonio isn't in the Big Ten anymore, because he really didn't like D'Antonio, and he didn't mind, sticking it to him. Now, I can't decide if he likes Fleck or not. I think there's a little bit of begrudging respect there, but when Fleck was pulling that nonsense at the end of the game, I don't know if it was last year or the year prior. Time has sort of ceased to have meaning in a pandemic, but the turnover debacle, take the pig, leave the timeouts, that whole thing. Listen, Kirk loves petty. He loves mess. He'll never say it, but we know he loves mess. And for Nebraska's athletic director to say, yeah, Iowa's not that good, we have better standards than that. Yeah, I can't think of anything that would have motivated Ferentz more than that for his entire career. I really can't. I can't. Sean, okay. Because I heard about this, the Scottish Deerhound, 2-time Best in Show winner. Here's my question, because I didn't understand that this was possible up until yesterday, that a former Best in Show winner can come back. You're already best. You don't need to go and prove it again, right? And if you're any of the rest of the dogs or their owners, I guess the dogs probably don't care. But if you're the other owners or handlers or whatever you want to call it, and you see Claire come back again, you're like, come on. Because Claire, the Scottish Deerhound, didn't forget how to be a good dog. You know what I mean? Right? She presumably didn't pick up, a hitch in her giddy up or anything like that. If you've already got the Best in Show, don't you just leave it for somebody else? What is there left to prove at this point? So I'll say this. I think it's poor sports dogship. or at the very least, poor sports handlership. I just don't think that there should be repeat winners. I think you keep giving opportunities to new and different good dogs. That's my thought. All right. It's what I believe. Real quick, since we have already been on for 40 minutes, I don't know about you guys, but this is going by really quickly for me, which means I'm having a good time. I hope you guys are having a good time too. And gosh, if you're not having a good time with Iowa sitting at 10-2 on the season, fresh off a victory in Lincoln again, in one in which Iowa really, really ripped Nebraska's hearts out. I mean, it was a little bit rude, wasn't it? Just a touch rude. If you're not having a good time after this, what you doing? Own your joy. Own your joy. And this is the time to be joyful. So yeah, I hope you all are enjoying this as much as I am. But anyway, we're darn near 45 minutes into this. So a little bit of a reset. My name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com. This is the Iowa Sports Review post-game show flagship edition. We are talking all things Hawkeyes and all things Scottish Deerhound. So if you're watching on Twitter, go ahead and hop into a little YouTube link. I think there should be a link. And yeah, there should. And just look elsewhere on our feed for it if there isn't one in that tweet itself. And while you're on YouTube, go ahead and click us a little bit of a like. It tells YouTube that we're doing a good job. And, even if you don't think we're doing a good job, it's okay to lie a little bit, just for our own feelings. It's a friendly lie. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you will always know when we're going live. And it's at least 3 times a week, every single week, because there's always Hawkeye stuff to talk about. And most importantly, this is a show for all of you. I'm just the pretty face and the smart mouth. Ultimately, this is for your takes. This is for your comments. This is all about the post-game community. So hop on into that little chat window. It's going to be at the bottom, maybe bottom right of your screen on the YouTube. Give us your hot takes, and our trusty, rusty staff will put them up on the screen and subject me to each and every one of them, or as many as we can get to. So with that said, Sean asks, are we fans of Minnesota or Wisconsin? Good question. And I think it ultimately depends on what you want to see this Hawkeye team do. Because on one hand, I think that I would rather see them at 10-2 going into the bowl season than 10-3, because 2 losses is fewer than 3. Quick maths. But that being said, they probably have a better shot of getting to, say, a Pasadena if they're conference runners-up, as opposed to, essentially 4th or 5th in line in the conference, depending on what you think of, say, Michigan State or Michigan. Excuse me. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. We haven't seen Iowa really just get wrecked by the Buckeyes in quite a while. In fact, the last time Iowa played Ohio State, something exactly different happened. Iowa beat Ohio State 55-24 in 2017, right there in Kinnick Stadium. People forget that. I haven't forgotten. So it would be great if that happened again. I think Ohio State would be very committed to letting that not happen again. And I prefer Iowa to go to Indianapolis and probably just get housed? I don't know. Because if that still makes them like second in line in the Big Ten, or like third in line at worst for bowl spots, that's very beneficial for the Hawkeyes. Very beneficial. And it also gets us away from that whole like weird loop of Outbacks and Citrus Bowls and just like SEC opponents in general, without like being the cursed monkey paw response of getting them to like the Cheez-It Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, it is good for Iowa to go to high profile bowl games. And if Iowa winning the division makes it more likely that they're in a New Year's Six bowl, I'm for it. I mostly don't care what Ohio State does to them in the interim. That being said, I don't think anyone here would be a fan of seeing Iowa go down like 35-0 in the first quarter, like what Ohio State did to Michigan State and Purdue. So, as long as Iowa's dignity remains intact, and it would take a lot for that not to happen, but Ohio State does have that a lot. As long as Iowa's dignity remains intact, I think that I'm rooting for Minnesota. I'm sorry. I don't like those words coming out of my mouth. I'm going to have to wash it down with some refreshing Diet Dr. Pepper. See, I'm good at ad reads. Refreshing, just like Fansville, which is a real place. Nicholas asks, how much will we miss Tyler Goodson? Not sure how many game breakers like him are waiting down the depth chart. A lot. We're going to miss him a lot. And that's nothing against Gavin Williams or LaShawn Williams. Because I think they both have tremendous upside themselves. But, Goodson was the guy on this team for several years and has earned every accolade that has been placed next to him. If he wants to go to the NFL, I say great. I'm not sure that he would get drafted after this year, or, I'm not sure he would be drafted high enough that it would merit getting out of college as soon as possible. Maybe yes, maybe no. Because and that's nothing against him. That's nothing against Goodson, because, gosh, when I see him, I see one of the best running backs to ever lace him up for the Hawkeyes. Ever. Excuse me. Or at the very least, in the post-Niall Kinnick era, right? I'm not putting him next to Niall Kinnick. I'm not quite sure there's going to be a statue of him out front of the stadium. I don't think they're going to rename it Goodson Stadium or anything like that. But in terms of guys who could tote the tater, you could make the case that he is the best since Sean Green and in the top 3 since the Cedric Shaw, Tavian Banks era. That's some great company. And you would have to work to convince me that he's not in the top 3 of the Kirk Ferentz era of running backs. I don't want to choose between him and Sean Green. I don't. Because that means that, we're thinking negatively about one of those two in ways that we weren't already. Goodson's been great. He has been a tremendous ambassador to the program, or for the program. And ultimately, that's what you want. That's what you want out of a guy who's going to be front and center, who is in the NIL era, going to earn his own shirt. You want him to be not only a good player, but a good Hawkeye, a good citizen, a good teammate, a good person in general. And he's good, son. He's good. He's good in every way that you want him to be good. Even his family's good. Felicia Goodson, if you're not following her on Twitter, what are you doing? Because it's great to be able to see teammates' families and understand, oh yeah, these are real people too. These are people just like you and me. It's I'm not sure what more you can ask for out of Goodson. So glad he's been a Hawkeye. And in another situation where just caring about recruiting stars doesn't really tell you the full picture of who these guys are recruiting and why. Joe, I don't have the TV on. Who's posing with the Big Ten West trophy? If it's the Hawkeyes, I'll say this. They have earned a share of the Big Ten West championship. Now, it's maybe not good enough to get them to Indianapolis, because if Wisconsin also has a share, obviously they win the tiebreaker. We already know that. But that being said, at worst, they are going to finish tied for first place for the division. And I'm okay with them celebrating that. This isn't, Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. You don't get to say, Job's not done. You didn't do it. I don't like that. We're not talking about a participation trophy here. They have earned a share of the division title, and they should be able to be happy about that. Does it mean, it might mean that they're not going to Indianapolis, but, just being able to celebrate the division title doesn't have anything to do with that. At the end of the day, I want them to be happy for the fact that they tied for, if not outright won, the division. They should be happy about that. Leonard, that's a great thing for him to wear. He's earned it. These guys have earned that. And it's not presumptuous either. There's no scenario in which they finish in anything less than a tie for the division championship. So nobody roots for Wisconsin. Yeah, but nobody roots for Minnesota in any situation ever. And Minnesota doesn't have encased meats, right? There's no Madison in the state of Minnesota. I checked. The best they've got is the Twin Cities, and the Twin Cities they're actually kind of good. Too cold though. Yeah. In regards to pettiness, Ethan asks, is Brian's greatest contribution up the pettiness level? Ever since Brian started his public takedowns of teams like Minnesota, ISU, Nebraska, and their recruiting, Kirk Ferentz is what? Oh, successful again. So it's interesting because I'm not sure how much of that is. I should say this. I don't know how independently of his dad that Brian Ferentz operates. Now, officially, Gary Barta is Brian Ferentz's dad, or is his boss. Officially, Barta is Brian Ferentz's boss, not his dad. And he's also not his dad. But Brian Ferentz would not have that job if he weren't there to be subordinate to Kirk. That is the way that all of these coaching staffs operate. And I'm not just talking about here's some special insight about the Hawkeyes. No, offensive coordinators in general are subordinate to the head coach, which means if the offensive coordinator is doing something that is not the way the head coach wants it, either the OC's looking for a new job or he's updating his approach, right? The notion that Brian Ferentz was going to bring the team into the 21st century is sort of a tail wagging the dog situation. And I get that it's an easy thing to it's a pleasant fiction to tell yourself that, oh, we've hired Brian Ferentz. Now things are about to go crazy. No, because the head coach is the same. And ultimately, up to and until we see the head coach say, yeah, I'm updating the offense and this is the guy that's going to do it. Right. And Kirk never said that. What we've been getting out of Brian Ferentz, is exactly what should have been expected the entire time. Because that's the way these relationships operate. And convincing yourself otherwise is, living in a world that is going to disappoint you. It's expecting results that aren't really grounded in reality. So disabuse yourselves, please, of the notion that Brian Ferentz was going to be some vanguard of 21st century football. It may be the case that when he's not working for his dad, he's going to bring that to a football team, whether it's Iowa or somebody else. Could be. Wouldn't surprise me even. But as long as he's working for daddy, and as long as he's working for any coach with a 20th century idea of what offense ought to be, and that's what Kirk Ferentz has. This is what we're going to get. This is what we're going to get out of him. This is what we're going to get out of any offensive coordinator for Iowa. It just is. Do we really want to emulate 2019 Minnesota? Well, no, we don't. You don't want to emulate anything where PJ Fleck is involved, other than having a 400-pound offensive lineman. I'm good with that. That's about it. Anything else, PJ Fleck? No boats getting rowed. We're going to keep breaking those oars. Adam, okay. Thank you for mentioning this, because there's only so many people that really appreciate the aesthetics of weird football, but it was a beautiful blocked punt. Just bounce and just go straight into the air. I wish I just could have watched the ball for a little while, like get that with a little super slow-mo. It's a weird arc you don't normally see a football take. And whenever that happens, something special is happening, right? I think that my favorite aesthetic thing about football's bouncing would be, after a touchdown, you take the ball, you spike it. When the ball exits the frame through the top, right? As opposed to like bouncing off to the side this way or that or whatever. But when it goes like straight up, that's a great spike. It's a great spike. Shouts out to Dave Cruz, because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Dave, you better be watching. But yeah, that was great. And hey, it was exactly what the moment deserved. Because deep down, I think a little inch of all of us was like, come on, block this. Just please, just block this punt. Like the game, we can turn this entire game around. Just block this punt. And then it happened, and it looks so cool doing it. Also, aside from the ball itself, the slow-mo of Marchese like twisting around the block, the full extension to actually get his hands on the ball, like it looks super cool. Like no wasted movement whatsoever. It had to be a dream come true for that guy. It had to be. And I think he's a senior too. Yeah, he is, because they had that little senior day celebration with him and his brother against Illinois. So yeah, this is his final like regular season game as a Hawkeye, and he gets to block a punt and looks super cool doing it. And like that's what starts the rally for the big win in Lincoln. That's what gets him to 10 wins. How cool is that? Oh man. That's got to feel so good. Joe asks, Barta isn't Brian's dad? No. They're cousins. Actually, they're brothers. Because Barta is also Kirk Ferentz's son. Any argument there? Kirk is definitely the daddy between the two. So yeah, they're related, but no. You got to understand who the dad is, and it's not Gary. Okay, Nicholas, that's a fair point, and I refuse to acknowledge it. Am I a hypocrite? No, I contain multitudes. I'm a hypocrite. But I acknowledge it. And if you acknowledge it, I'm no longer a hypocrite. It's facts. It's science. It's science. Yeah, Nefarious says, that's one of the few things that I've always wanted to do, is to like block a punt or block a kick, get that like clean, crisp, move off of the edge, twist, turn, like all that body control. I'm capable of none of it. I am not athletic. I have no coordination. I think if I tried to block a punt like that, I would injure myself, perhaps severely. They would be like, how does a guy break his own femur just just like trying to jump. Like that's for car crashes. How did this guy do it? I would break my own femur. So I'm not even going to try it. But I know that felt good for him. It had to feel good. And not only for the situational thing, but just like, oh, how cool it was. And boy, there were a lot of really cool plays in this game, weren't there? Obviously the block punt, the interception at the end, which was to nobody. Still not sure what happened there, but I'm happy for it. There was really no other way a Nebraska loss could end. Just a pick to nobody. It was perfect for this season. The fumble recovery by I think Lee was the one that ended up with that one, but an underrated part of that was Zach Van Valkenburg wrapping up Smothers, even though the fumble had already occurred. Because guess what? When you wrap up a guy like that, he's not going to make the recovery himself. So that ball was still sitting there because Van Valkenburg was still doing his job. And that's what helped really bring this to the, helped Iowa recover, really get that that rally going. So, yeah, can't say enough about that. Drink break. Good dead air. Good dead air, Adam. All right, we've been at this for an hour. You guys want to talk a little bit of basketball? Because I feel like we can talk a little bit of basketball. I will say this: we haven't had any games since Wednesday, so not really a whole lot more to talk about there. We do have tonight a game against Portland State, and that one is at 7 p.m. So, excuse me, goodness, who let a monster in here? So in about 90 minutes, it is Iowa's last little tune-up game prior to the Virginia game. And Virginia seems like they're starting to get it back together a little bit. Just really trounced Providence on Tuesday, as we mentioned before. I don't have any optimism for Portland State in this game. I think it's going to be a little bit tough for the Vikings. But I am curious to see, well, one, first of all, is it going to be more Keegan Murray smash again? Because I would like to see that. And two, it's the last game before Virginia. And that's a trip to Virginia. And the Cavaliers have not had a great start to the season. Lost to Navy at home, which was not good. Trounced by Houston, which Houston's going to really, really beat up on a lot of teams. But that being said, they're starting to get it back together again. Oh, excuse me. They play that super slow, defense-heavy, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube about their very special brand of defense, which is basically guiding the ball towards places on the floor where the offense doesn't want it, for lack of a better term, like guiding it toward bad shots, basically. So I'm very curious to see if the Iowa offense, and Keegan in particular, are able to break this defense, are able to get good shots where, they're not being guided toward that. It's really fascinating stuff. Just go on YouTube and just Google or just search for Virginia defense. And there's hours of material on what they try to get their opponents to do, and it's largely successful. Tony Bennett knows what he's doing. So this is going to be what tells us whether Iowa is as for real as they've looked so far, or if this is a team that's really going to be fighting just to get into the tournament at all. And I don't understand what I should say, I don't have a good idea yet of which side this team's going to end up on. I don't. So I think Virginia is going to be a great test for how much this team has adapted and improved since last season ended so spectacularly. Virginia has some massively underrated towns. I agree. You got Alexandria, Charlottesville. I don't know any other ones. I'm sorry. I've only barely been to Virginia, but I take your word for it. Will Iowa have any game in the paint 1L against Virginia? What? Oh, Roanoke. Roanoke, great town. Great town. So yeah, and the women still going strong. Hopefully they're going to be on television again shortly. Caitlin Clark already getting that national buzz. You'll love to see it. Zanino again, like that 1-2 punch for the women is going to have them in the top 10 probably most of the season, probably, and it's just fun to watch. It is. They do so many good things with the basketball. All right. Well, our chat is starting to wind down. We've been on air for over an hour. Blacksburg, great town. Never been to Norfolk. Heard good things too. Yeah. Shouts out to the state of Virginia. I hope bad things happen to the Cavaliers on Monday. But hey, nice state. Good state. Good state. But with chat winding down, with over an hour under our belts, and it being Black Friday, you've all got leftovers out there, right? I hope. I do. I'll let you all go. I think that we've talked enough about Iowa's 28-21 victory over Nebraska in Lincoln, setting the number 16 Hawkeyes to 10-2 on the season, and giving them still an outside shot at the Big Ten West berth in the championship game. At a minimum, it has won them a share of the Big Ten West division championship. So no one's ever going to be able to take that away from them, unless it comes out that, like, Tyler Linderbaum was academically ineligible. Just going to guess that that's not the case. This it's an accomplishment. It ought to be celebrated. And I don't much care for people who would suggest otherwise. So with that, hey, let's celebrate. Let's have ourselves a beautiful rest of the long weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you from me and from the rest of the Go Iowa Awesome crew. My name is Adam Jacobi. Thank you all for joining us. Go Iowa Awesome. Go Hawks. Good night.